Hypothetically, some countries would be easier to invade than others. Any nation that is easily accessible via land or sea and has a small-ish population with limited defensive capabilities would make this list. Then there are the more difficult countries to invade. They may be surrounded by harsh terrain or deserts, or they could simply be highly advanced in terms of military power and personnel. And then there are some countries that a sane government simply wouldn't even consider invading. Extremely difficult, far too time-consuming, and entirely too dangerous. China is very much one of these countries. There are so many obstacles to being able to successfully invade China that the only options would be strikes from air and sea. What then makes China so hard to invade? When sizing up the task of invading a country, one of the first things to consider is its geography. China is just massive. With approximately 9.6 million square kilometers of land area, it's behind only Russia and Canada in terms of sheer mass. At first, one might think that would make China ideal for invasion, given that there are so many possible points of entry. However, if we look closely at the type of land comprising China's land borders, the prospect of invasion suddenly becomes a little bit more problematic. And by that I mean a lot. To the south, China is well protected by several mountain ranges. The Nanling mountain range extends over 1,000 kilometers in south-central China, running east to west. If invaders wanted to avoid the Nanlings, they could try heading further west, possibly entering China from Nepal or India. But this, of course, is where any plan of a southern invasion would go right out the window. China and India are separated by the Himalayas. Yeah, the world's largest mountain range covers a huge stretch of China's southwestern border, over 3,500 kilometers, in fact. So that effectively rules out an invasion from the south. Trying to enter China from the north or west also brings about another set of challenges. If invaders tried to invade from the north via Mongolia, they would have to contend with the unforgiving Gobi Desert. The Gobi is over 1 million square kilometers of desolate, rugged terrain that dips well below minus 20 Celsius in the winter. By the time invading forces have crossed the Gobi to enter China, exhaustion would have already taken a significant toll. With the north and south providing huge barriers to entry, invaders might turn their attention to the west. And again, they would find another dead end. China's northwest is a forbidding expanse of desert and mountain ranges. At over 1,000 kilometers long and around 400 kilometers wide, the Taklamakan is China's biggest desert. It's home to scorching days, freezing nights, sandstorms, and unfriendly reptiles. If this wasn't discouraging enough, the Taklamakan Desert is bounded by mountain ranges to the north, south, and west, with the Gobi Desert lying to the east. Invading China from the west or northwest wouldn't be so much difficult as virtually impossible. With the south, north, and west all posing huge headaches for would-be invaders, the only alternative would be to approach from the east, or the Pacific Ocean. And that's where any potential invaders would literally find themselves in hot water. China currently has the world's largest navy with over 700 vessels at its disposal. This includes an estimated 370 warships, which is at least 70 more than the US has, and that number is projected to grow by 395 ships in 2025 and 435 ships in 2030. Needless to say, that far outpaces the other heavyweights, such as Russia and the US. These vessels include surface warships, submarines, aircraft carriers, and mine-clearing ships. New submarines have been developed that come with cruise missiles, making it possible for them to launch deadly accurate land and sea strikes. So, yeah, double threat. China is more than equipped to deal with any would-be invaders from the ocean, but it's highly likely anyone would actually make it that far. The Chinese have been busy constructing man-made islands in the South China Sea, which winds up from Singapore to the straits between Taiwan and China. These island security systems were designed to not only detect any suspicious vessels or aircraft approaching, but to blow them to smithereens. Each of the islands is equipped with sophisticated weapon systems for detecting and destroying incoming missiles and aircraft. They include anti-ship and anti-aircraft missile systems, laser and jamming equipment, and fighter jets. Do you want to try invading China from the sea? Go ahead and go for it, you know? Get a boat, get on out there. Do so at your own peril. Any invasion of China would also likely be thwarted by its massive arsenal of airstrikes. The Chinese Air Force is the world's second biggest behind the US, with about 4,000 vessels at its disposal. At least 2,500 of these are fighter aircraft. The cream of the crop is the J-20 stealth jet, which carries 6 missiles with a flying speed of Mach 2. That is over 2,000 kilometers an hour, in case you were wondering. The world's largest navy and second largest air force are just a part of the world's largest armed forces. China now has more than 2 million military personnel, making up its army, navy, and air force. Just to give a bit of perspective here, India has the next biggest with roughly 1,400,000. America and Russia are about level with 1,300,000 personnel, and it's not really just about numbers, to be clear. For the past 2 decades, China has been working around the clock to develop its high-tech military programs. One of the more recent innovations is an AI-powered surveillance system. This electromagnetic device supposedly detects enemy communication systems and renders them useless, while maintaining their own systems. Of course, when weighing up a country's military strengths, the ultimate trump card is nuclear strike. While China may still be far behind the US and Russia in terms of stockpiles, the East Asian giant has rapidly been expanding its nuclear capabilities. American satellite pictures has revealed areas of extensive missile production in the north and northwestern deserts. Experts have guessed that China could have anywhere between 400 and 500 nuclear weapons on standby. Again, we have more, but that's still a lot of nukes. As formidable sounding as that may be, high up in the sky lies China's real high-tech pride and joy: satellites. China is believed to have around 600 satellites currently in orbit, at least half of which are used for military and defensive purposes. These satellites can perform surveillance to locate, identify, and track any potential enemy forces operating in the Indo-Pacific region. The US, the UK, Russia, India, and Japan, all those guys, have also spent massive amounts of time and money to get their satellites up into orbit. Not surprisingly, America has the most satellites up in space with almost 3,000. But again, not just about the numbers. China has warned the rest of the world that it has developed lasers that are capable of shooting down or at least dismantling other satellites if the need arises. So if we look at China's geography and military capabilities, an invasion seems less and less likely. And yet still, a final ace up China's sleeve is its population. An invasion means to physically move into and take over another country's territory. This means inevitable contact with the citizens of the country being invaded. And with 1.4 billion people within its borders, that's a serious number of backup fighters. India may have overtaken China for the world's biggest population, but 1.5 billion people, I don't even need to tell you, is still a lot of people. In the event of an invasion, the Chinese government would move swiftly to ensure that all hands were on deck to repel the invaders. Whether this means summoning up millions of people to fight as reserves, work on mass munition production, or basically do whatever's asked of them, there's little doubt that the majority of the population would respond in full. The only possible routes into China might be via the Eurasian steppe to the north, or the jungles of Myanmar and Laos to the southeast. The Eurasian steppe is a massive grassland that meets China on the Mongolian border. This area and the southeastern jungles are slightly easier to navigate than the mountains or deserts, but it would be massively optimistic to even try. Not only would China's satellites and defense systems immediately pick up on any hostile activity, but the armed forces would be able to mobilize in record time. China spent a lot of time and effort to ensure that its military and air force can quickly click into action at the drop of a hat. This includes training masses of reserves, who are more than capable of preparing weapons, organizing transport, and moving into positions when ordered to. So if we take a step back and we look at all these cold, hard facts, it's pretty clear why China is so hard to invade. The next question seems to be, who would even bother to invade China? While tensions between China and the US have been at an all-time high, it's really unlikely that either country would seriously consider invading the other. Outside of the US, the only other country that can match China in terms of military muscle is Russia. And for now, at least, the two seem to have formed a relationship of sorts. In terms of sheer numbers, India might be able to match China, but again, China's just too well defended. The physically imposing geography, the highly advanced defense systems, and massive population all stand in the way. Invading China wouldn't just be difficult. I'm telling you, it would be a suicide mission.